everybody, and welcome today to 188 of Rhys's stories. And today I'm going to be reading you Christmas with Aunty Mary by Eleanor, Gormally, and illustrated by Orla, Roche. Aunty Mary lived in a little cottage at the bottom of a hilly field. She had a round face, snow-white hair, soft peachy cheeks and huge hugging arms. Every year without fail on Christmas Eve, little Liam and Emer went on a visit to their Aunty Mary. They always came early and left before dusk. This year the snow began to fall as Emer and Liam crossed the fields behind their house and headed for Aunty Mary's cottage. Tucked inside the red rucksack of Emer's bag were presents all done up in bright, glittery paper. "There you are," Mary beamed as she lifted the latch to let them in. "I thought you'd never get here." Emer and Liam bounced excitedly in the door, making the not-so-round holly wreath go wibble-wobble. "We brought you presents," they cried. Aunty Mary laughed as she took the bundle of sparkling paper and carefully unwrapped her parcel. Pink smelly soap and a jar of white gooey face cream. All the while the snow continued to fall silently. Liam and Emer loved these Christmas visits. They loved the not-so-round holly and ivy wreath that swung from the front door. They loved the tall, tilting Christmas tree that stood in the hall. They loved the smell of the turf fire in the snug kitchen, but most of all they loved Aunty Mary's stories. Emer pulled off her woolly gloves and warmed her hands by the open fire. The snow fell thick and heavy. Liam searched for sweets hidden by Aunty Mary. All around the cottage, the snow piled higher and higher against the door and windows, and no one noticed. Tears ran down Liam's chubby cheeks. "What about Santa?" he cried. Then, thinking of his Christmas stocking, he sobbed even louder. "I want to go home now." Even Aunty Mary's sweets didn't help. Emer hugged little Liam close to her. "Don't cry, Liam," she said, poking her freckled face into his. "Santa will know where we are. Just wait and see." "How about we go out and check the animals, Liam?" Aunty Mary asked as she took his small hand in hers and wrapping him in one of her old coats, they trudged together through the snow. "Can't forget the poor cows and the donkey tonight of all nights," she said, handing Liam a fistful of hay. The donkey nuzzled up to the small, tearful boy and began to munch the hay from his hands. "When I was a little girl, my dad always gave the animals an extra helping of hay on Christmas Eve," Aunty Mary told Liam as she cut open a fresh bale and gave more to the animals. "It's lovely and cozy in here," said Liam. "Sure, if it wasn't for the heat of the animals," Aunty Mary replied. "How would Mary and Joseph have managed to keep Jesus warm that first Christmas night?" Liam giggled as he thought. For a baby snuggling up to a cow and a donkey. Emer stayed inside the cottage. At first she played with the musical crepe that sat on the windowsill. Then she watched out for signs of Santa's sleigh. At last she heard Aunty Mary and Liam come in from the barn. There were bits of hay sticking out of Liam's hair, but there was no sleigh or reindeer or red-cloaked, white-bearded man in sight. Feeling a bit disappointed, Emer turned to her aunt and asked what she had been waiting to ask all evening. "Will you tell us one of your stories, please?" Aunty Mary's eyes twinkled with anticipation. Of course I will, love, she smiled, but first let's open some of our treats. In the soft glow of the tidy kitchen, Emma watched in amazement as Aunty Mary took a large brown box from above the cupboard and placed it carefully on the table. What's that? Liam shouted with excitement. A Christmas box, Aunty Mary said. A present that has come from old Mr. Brock's shop down in the village every Christmas. For as long as I can remember, the children craned their necks to peep in. You're usually gone home by the time I open it, she said. Now, let's see what we have this year. Aunty Mary, let the children take turns at pulling out the treats. Ham dotted with spicy cloves, a turkey all ready for the oven, a fat round plum pudding, rosy red raspberry jam in a bubbly glass container, chocolate biscuits, toffee sweets, and the cutest Christmas cake that had not one but 3 snowmen sunk into the white icing. The table was laden with the most amazing treats the children had ever seen. Aunty Mary stopped and looked around her neat kitchen. At the table full of food at the children, their eyes gleaming with delight, she smiled to herself. This was going to be a grand Christmas. An eager hand tugged Aunty Mary's apron. You haven't forgotten about our story, Emma pleaded, her cheeks pink with excitement. Of course I haven't, she reassured her. Let me pull the couch over close to the fire. The children snuggled down between the cushions and watched her as she stoked the turf in the grate and put the Christmas candle by the window. At last, all was in place for the children to hear Aunty Mary's special story. Fado, 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 fado. This is a story, she began in a hushed and low voice, about a woman called Mary, a man called Joseph, and a little baby who was about to be born. This is no ordinary story. It is an extraordinary story, an ancient story, a story that has been told for over 2,000 years. A story told to me by my mother when I was your age. She smiled at the children, and it all began on that special night. Fado, fado. Some said it was a beautiful night. The sky was dark and soft and velvety and teeming with tiny stars. Some said that a light hung in the sky like shimmering, sparkling dust. Some said something mysterious and magical was about to happen. The little kitchen became quiet and still, while on that night Mary and Joseph were in Bethlehem. They had trekked all the way from the village of Nazareth. Their emperor, Caesar Augustus, wanted to know how many people lived in his kingdom, so Mary and Joseph had to travel all the way to Bethlehem, back to where Joseph's people came from, to sign a big book. But when they arrived, Bethlehem was crowded. Women, children, and men were everywhere, all looking for somewhere to stay. There was no room left in any of the local inns, which wasn't very good news, as it was getting near the time for Mary's baby to be born. Poor Mary, Emer said. I hope she'll be okay. Oh, don't you worry, love, Aunty Mary said confidently. God always looks after us. Now, nobody knows for sure how they found a place, but find a place they did. And so the story goes that in the warmth of a stable, Mary gave birth to a boy. She wrapped her little treasure in swaddling clothes and put him to sleep in a manger. and the cows and donkey kept him warm, chirped Liam. But what about the shepherds? Emer asked excitedly, taking the musical clip down from the window. They're on their way, Aunty Mary said softly. Emer shut her eyes tight, and sure enough she could see the shepherds coming down from the hills. One by one, down they came with sheep and lambs, Aunty Mary said, gazing into the fire, and what amazing stories they had about angels, dazzling lights, and sweet singing. They had left their fields in search of a baby that the angels had told them would be wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And there he was, our very own Saviour. And the wise men brought all their presents, Liam shouted eagerly as he eyed all the goodies. Indeed they did, said Aunty Mary. They came from the east. You know, they were looking for a baby too. First they went to Jerusalem, but the baby wasn't there. Then a bright star pointed them to Bethlehem. They arrived with wonderful gifts of myrrh and gold and frankincense. They bowed before the baby and then walked quietly into the night. What a funny thing to do, laughed Liam. I think Mary might have thought so too. His aunt nodded. She knew something very special was happening, so she treasured in her heart everything she saw and heard that night. Silent night, holy night. Suddenly the little kitchen filled with the soft sound of silent night, holy night. It was coming from the musical crib. Aunty Mary hugged the children close. Never forget, she whispered, her voice soft and serious. This is no ordinary story. It is an extraordinary story, a story told for over 2,000 years, a story told to me by my mother, a story you can tell too. Can I tell the story next year, Aunty Mary? Yawned Emer. Before Aunty Mary could reply, Emer had cuddled up to her little brother and fallen asleep. The children didn't feel Aunty Mary pick up the soft furry blanket from the back of the couch and tuck them in. They didn't see her blow out the Christmas candle. They didn't see how by the soft light of the glowing fire she bowed her head in gratitude and gave thanks to God for the birth of his son this Christmas night. The end. I hope you enjoyed that lovely, wonderful, beautiful story called Christmas with Aunty Mary by Eleanor Gormally, illustrated by Orla, Roche. And yes, so I hope you enjoyed that lovely story. And Eleanor Gormally lives in Limerick. And this is her second children's book. Her first, Little Lucy's Family, a story about adoption, was published by Varieties in 2006. And Orla Roche is an illustrator based in Dublin, so written and illustrated and printed in Ireland. So I hope you enjoyed that lovely, wonderful, beautiful story. And I guess I would see you all tomorrow for day 289 of Rhys's stories. So bye everybody.